The plasma conduits shrieked their death song as Arlo's research pod slammed into the obsidian surface of Ravencroft. Warning lights painted the cramped cockpit in hellish crimson, while emergency systems screamed contradictory alerts. His harness bit deep into his shoulders as gravitational forces that should have liquefied human bone somehow left him merely bruised and gasping. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines. The acrid bite of ozone and scorched metal filled his lungs as he fought free from the restraints. Through the spider-webbed viewport, twin suns cast everything in stark amber relief. Jagged rock formations stretched toward a sky the color of dried blood. He'd been tracking energy signatures for 3 days when the gravitational anomaly caught his ship. Now the navigation array flickered uselessly, quantum communicator dark as vacuum. The indigenous life readings that had drawn him here pulsed stronger than ever on his portable scanner. Something was moving out there. Arlo checked his field kit with practiced efficiency. Emergency beacon, check. Atmospheric analyzer, functional. Portable shelter generator, operational. The scanner in his hand painted thermal signatures across its screen in shifting blues and reds, most clustered around the geothermal vents in the distance. But one massive signature lurked just beyond the ridgeline. The signature was moving toward him. His hands moved automatically, assembling the emergency shelter against the pod's twisted hull. The molecular fabric rippled to life, creating a pressurized dome that would keep him alive for perhaps 48 hours. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, shadows danced across the alien landscape. That's when he saw her. She emerged from behind a crystalline outcropping, like something torn from humanity's darkest nightmares. Nearly 3 meters tall, her form was a nightmare fusion of grace and terror. Obsidian scales caught the dying light, throwing back reflections like shattered mirrors. 4 arms moved with predatory fluidity, each ending in claws that could rend plasteel. Her head was angular alien, with compound eyes that held depths he couldn't fathom. Local legends called her kind demons. Now Arlo understood why. She approached the shelter with calculated steps, each footfall silent despite her massive frame. The scanner in his hand registered impossible readings. Body temperature fluctuations that should have indicated severe trauma. Neural activity patterns unlike anything in the xenobiology databases. Energy emissions that defied classification. When she pressed one clawed hand against the shelter's outer wall, Arlo felt his world shift. The touch lasted only seconds, but in that contact, something passed between them. Not telepathy exactly. More like the ghost of understanding, ephemeral as solar wind. Her compound eyes fixed on his face through the transparent barrier, and for one impossible moment, he glimpsed something that transcended mere animal intelligence. Fear, curiosity, loneliness. She could have torn through the shelter's walls like tissue paper. Instead, she settled onto her haunches just outside, watching him with those impossible eyes. Waiting. Arlo's hand trembled as he reached for the shelter's external communication array. The device was designed for emergency contact with rescue ships, but its speakers could project sound outside the protective dome. His finger hovered over the activation switch. Every xenobiology protocol screamed against direct contact with an unknown species, especially one that radiated such obvious lethality. But those eyes held intelligence that made his academic training feel suddenly inadequate. He activated the speakers. Hello. The word emerged as a barely whispered croak. She tilted her head at the sound, compound eyes shifting through spectrums of light he couldn't name. When she responded, it wasn't with sound. Images flooded his mind. Not thoughts exactly, but impressions layered with emotional resonance. The sensation of soaring through Ravencroft's crimson skies. The taste of exotic minerals drawn from deep caverns. The overwhelming ache of existing as the last of her kind. Arlo staggered, pressing his palm against his temple as the alien consciousness touched his own. She was trying to communicate, but her method bypassed human neural pathways entirely. The contact left him dizzy, nauseous, yet strangely exhilarated. "You're alone, too." He spoke the words aloud, though he suspected she understood meaning rather than language. Her massive form shifted, bringing her closer to the shelter wall. When she pressed her hand against the barrier again, the contact felt different. Gentler. New images came. The crash of his pod seen from her perspective, brilliant against the darkening sky. Her approach driven not by predatory instinct, but by curiosity about this strange visitor. The careful way she'd circled his shelter, testing its defenses not to breach them, but to understand them. She'd been protecting him. The revelation hit with stunning clarity. While he'd been cataloging her as a potential threat, she'd been standing guard against the true dangers that stalked Ravencroft's surface. Through her shared perceptions, he glimpsed creatures that made her seem gentle by comparison. Things that moved beneath the planet's crust, drawn by the electromagnetic signatures of crashed technology. As if summoned by his thoughts, the ground began to vibrate. Arlo's scanner erupted in alerts as massive thermal signatures converged on their position. Through the shelter's viewports, he watched stone foundations crack and heave. Something vast was emerging from the deep places, attracted by the wreckage of his pod. The alien Vila, he decided to call her, after the constellation that had guided him here, sprang to her feet with liquid grace. Her forearms spread wide as defensive spines erupted along her scales. The low harmonic that emerged from her throat made the shelter's walls resonate like a struck bell. She wasn't preparing to attack him. She was preparing to defend him. The ground split open 20 meters from the shelter. What emerged defied easy description. It was all writhing tentacles and gnashing mineral teeth, a living geological formation that digested metal and stone with equal ease. Its eyeless bulk oriented on the electromagnetic beacon of Arlo's crashed pod. But Vila placed herself directly in its path. The battle that followed redefined Arlo's understanding of combat. Vila moved like controlled violence, each strike precisely calculated to exploit the creature's anatomical weaknesses. Her claws carved through sections of living rock, sending fragments spinning into the amber twilight. When the creature wrapped her in crushing coils, she phased through the restraints, literally shifting her molecular density to escape. But the underground predator was massive, and more were coming. Arlo watched through the shelter's cameras as 3 more creatures breached the surface. Vila couldn't fight them all, not alone. Her defensive stance wavered as exhaustion began to tell, and one of the newcomers managed to score a glancing blow across her flank. Dark fluid that might have been blood spattered the shelter's walls. The sight of her injury triggered something primal in Arlo's human psyche. Without conscious thought, he activated the shelter's emergency protocols and triggered the exterior defense grid. Electromagnetic pulses designed to disable hostile technology instead confused the creature's mineral-based sensory organs. They reeled back, writhing in apparent distress. Vila turned toward the shelter, surprise radiating through their shared connection. She hadn't expected him to intervene, hadn't thought him capable of meaningful assistance. But the pulse had given her the opening she needed. Working together, they drove off the underground predators. Vila's physical prowess combined with Arlo's technological advantages created a synergy neither could have achieved alone. When the last creature retreated into the depths, she approached the shelter again. This time, when she touched the barrier, the contact felt like coming home. Images flowed between them with increasing complexity. Her species had once been spacefaring. He learned, masters of a technology that blended consciousness with quantum mechanics. They'd explored the galaxy through methods that transcended simple, faster-than-light travel, experiencing the universe as living entities rather than mere observers. But a plague had taken them. Not a biological pathogen, but something that attacked the quantum foundations of their consciousness itself. One by one, her people had simply faded away, their awareness scattered across dimensions they could no longer access. She was the last, had been alone for cycles beyond counting, guarding the ruins of her civilization on this forbidden world. Arlo pressed his own hand against the barrier, aligning it with hers. Through the contact, he shared his own memories, Earth's blue skies and endless oceans, the excitement of discovery that had driven him to the stars, the loneliness of exploration, always moving between worlds, but never finding a place to truly belong. They were both exiles in their own ways. The shelter's power reserves were failing. He could hear the environmental systems cycling down, preparing for the end. But Vila's presence filled him with unexpected calm. If these were his final hours, at least he wouldn't face them alone. That's when she showed him the true reason for her vigil. Deep beneath Ravencroft's surface lay a quantum resonance chamber, the last intact facility of her people's technology. It could open pathways through folded space, but it required two consciousness patterns working in harmony. One to navigate the quantum foam, another to maintain dimensional stability. She'd been waiting, not just surviving, but waiting for someone who could partner with her unique form of consciousness. Someone whose neural patterns could interface with technologies that bridged the gap between mind and machine. Someone like him. The shelter's power finally died, but Vila's claws made quick work of the molecular barriers. As the artificial atmosphere mixed with Ravencroft's surprisingly breathable air, Arlo found himself face to face with the being he'd initially perceived as demonic. Up close, she was magnificent. Her scales held depths like captured starlight. The compound eyes that had seemed so alien revealed themselves as windows into a consciousness vast and ancient, yet touched with something unmistakably like hope. When she extended one clawed hand toward him, he didn't hesitate. The physical contact sent shockwaves through both their nervous systems. Her consciousness flowed into his like warm honey, carrying with it eons of memory and knowledge. In return, she experienced human emotion in all its chaotic intensity. Joy and fear, curiosity and determination, loneliness and the desperate need for connection. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. She led him through caverns that pulse with bioluminescent life, down passages carved by technologies that shaped matter at the quantum level. The resonance chamber waited in the depths like a crystalline cathedral, its walls reflecting infinite versions of themselves across parallel dimensions. When Vila interfaced with the ancient machinery, her consciousness expanded across multiple realities simultaneously. Arlo felt the strain threatening to tear her awareness apart, and without thinking, he reached out through their bond to anchor her. His human neural patterns proved surprisingly compatible with the alien technology. Where her consciousness provided navigation through quantum uncertainties, his offered the stability needed to maintain coherent dimensional locks. Together, they opened a pathway through folded space that connected Ravencroft to the inhabited systems beyond. But as the portal stabilized, Arlo faced an impossible choice. The technology could send him home, back to Earth and the life he'd known. Or he could remain here with Vila, helping her explore the dimensional pathways that her people had once traveled. The universe suddenly seemed vast with possibility, filled with wonders that defied human understanding. He thought of Earth's crowded cities and scheduled research missions. Then he looked at Vila, whose ancient eyes held promises of adventures beyond imagining. The choice was easier than he'd expected. Hand in hand, they stepped through the portal together. Behind them, Ravencroft's amber skies faded into memory. Ahead lay dimensions where consciousness and reality danced in harmony, where two unlikely partners could explore the infinite together. The universe had gained something new, not a human and an alien, but a hybrid consciousness that transcended the limitations of either species alone. In finding each other, they'd forged bonds that would reshape their understanding of what was possible. Sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't about cataloging new worlds. Sometimes they were about discovering who you could become when you found someone willing to share the journey. Together, they soared through quantum foam toward destinations that existed beyond the boundaries of any star chart. Behind them, their shared laughter echoed across dimensions, carrying with it the promise of wonders yet to be discovered. The bonds they'd forged were stronger than any force in the known universe, and their adventure was just beginning.